Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this flagship panel. It's wonderful to see so many of you in the room with us today. Let's take a closer look at today's topic. Amidst war, crises, rising interest rates, fiscal constraints, how can the tangible and intangible aspects of connectivity be better enabled to distribute their benefits across the hinterland which they serve? And how, at this time of complexity and volatility, can countries work with MDBs like AIIB for strategic infrastructure investment? Welcome to this flagship discussion on enhancing connectivity in a challenging world. My name is Michelle Martin. I am a broadcaster based in Singapore, and it is my privilege to be here with you today to introduce our first speaker. Here to frame the exploration of our topic this morning, he is an economist of incredible noted repute, AIIB's Vice President for Investment Operations. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Urjit Patel.
Thank you very much for that generous introduction. Governor Dr. Mohammed Maid, Chair of the AIIB Board of Governors and the Minister of Finance of Egypt, Governor Diokno, Finance Secretary of the Philippines, alternate Governor Mr. Wang Dong-Wei, Vice Finance Minister of China, esteemed governors, distinguished panelists, honored guests. It is my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of President Jin to this flagship seminar on enhancing connectivity in a challenging world. Today, we meet at the intersection of Asia and Africa on Egypt's hallowed Sinai Peninsula. Egypt is a symbol of regional connectedness in our world, and the Sinai Peninsula lies at the geographical heart of that connectedness. As Egypt demonstrates, connectivity is facilitated by more than just geography. Infrastructure plays a central role in today's globalized world. Well-planned infrastructure connectivity projects foster physical and virtual linkages within and between neighboring countries, while also building a base for trade, economic activity, and cultural exchange that contribute to greater welfare and international cooperation. Sustainable economic development, create wealth, and improve hard infrastructure connectivity in Asia and beyond by investing in infrastructure and other productive sectors. Connectivity is at the core of what AIIB stands for. Since 2016, AIIB has approved 31 cross-border connectivity projects with approved financing amount exceeding $5 billion. Improving connectivity through infrastructure investment also drives social development. Just as importantly, AIIB builds connections which will not only benefit communities where our projects are located, but will have far-reaching positive impacts on markets in Africa through to Asia and beyond. So one has both geographical, economic, and social externality emanating from these investments. Many of our members serve as critical economic links between Africa and Asia. We are proud to say that to give a few examples, our board has approved financing of transshipment and gateway container handling capacity in Damietta Port in Egypt, a rural road project across 11 regions of Côte d'Ivoire, and a digital connectivity project in Rwanda. Each of these projects serve to connect Africa with Asia, physically, digitally, and trade. We look forward to financing infrastructure investments that connect people and countries has brought great economic progress and opportunity to many. However, we are also connected by common challenges such as climate change, cross-border environmental issues, rapid urbanization, and social issues, among others. In the face of these challenges, our infrastructure solutions should be concomitantly smart. We are ready and well positioned to help our members finance connectivity infrastructure, increase the efficiency and resilience of existing infrastructure, and provide innovative financing and tools needed to implement connectivity infrastructure for tomorrow. Once again, I welcome you all today, and I look forward to the discussion ahead. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. Thank you for those interesting remarks which help frame our discussion, Mr. Patel. I would now like to call on our panelists to come on stage with me. First up, we are privileged to have with us Dr. Mohammed Maid, Egypt's Minister of Finance and an AIIB Governor. Dr. Maid, please. Also with us, Dr. Benjamin Diokno, who is Philippines Finance Secretary. Mr. Wang Dongwei is China's Vice Finance Minister and an AIIB alternate governor. And with us also is Indonesian economist Professor Iwan Aziz, who is Professor of Emerging Markets and an adjunct professor from Cornell University. And last but certainly not least, Ms. Cynthia Rosley is a 20-year veteran of PTPLN, where she is CFO. The state-owned company operates the electricity sector in Indonesia. All right, let's start. My first question goes to you, Minister Maid. The theme of the AIIB Annual Meeting this year is sustainable growth in a challenging world. What, in your opinion, are the biggest challenges in the realm of connectivity infrastructure, given today's global environment and also in your country?
Thank you very much for this question. And from my point of view and from my experience, the world is going through very difficult challenges. When you look at this environment of high inflation, high interest rate, high cost of food and energy, and people needs are growing, and accessibility for cheap financing are not there. Our budgets are constrained. The spaces are not there. After 4 years of COVID-19, plus disruption in supply chain, plus high inflation, plus negative impact of the war. So all these together means the priorities have changed. The ability to finance infrastructure is not there as it was before. When you have the challenge either to use your budget space to go and buy your people's needs of food, energy, oil, and drugs, and all of that. At the same time, the other ministers asking you to give more money for investment, to make roads, to make bridges, to make hospitals, to make schools, to make communication and all of that, you will say to them, sorry, wait. Wait, because the money have other needs which have more priorities than you. This means that the ability to continue investing in infrastructure will be negatively impacted, and you will not be able to do it. And look at the emerging markets, look at the developing countries. They are suffering from high debt cost of serving the debt, and at the end, this will negatively impact their ability to invest and to grow and create jobs and make improvement for infrastructure. These are the reason behind our calls. Please, MDBs, you need to do something. You need to look at, number one, the current international financial architecture. Is it valid anymore? Or it has let us down? We are disappointed with your current international financial architecture, which is not able to meet the challenges. It was designed for specific purposes, and these purposes are not there. You are not able to meet the challenges. It's benefiting few, not all. So number one, look at the current international financial architecture and either modify it or look for alternatives. This is number one. Number two, how can we ensure that we will have a better financial architecture which can serve all, not few, and give alternatives which can ensure that this financial system will continue delivering? Number three, is it possible to look for alternatives like what we are pushing for now? Let us help the private sector to mobilize capital. Let us help those countries who needs more cheap financing in order for them to be able to have investment opportunities to improve the living standard of their people, to be able to invest in infrastructure, to create jobs. Otherwise, they will suffer from growing debt service, and all their resources will be just to serve those who lend them or give them the money. So the money will go somewhere else. We need to change this, and we need MDBs to reform and to change their equation, which has been now for decades, but with the last 4 years, I have to be very honest, very straightforward, it failed. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Maid. A powerful call there for paradigmatic change when it comes to financing for developing countries to move forward. Dr. Diokno, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Would you like to pick up on that point on challenges for global connectivity?
Thank you very much. For the Philippines, interconnectivity is very important because the Philippines consists of 7,200 islands. So both physical and digital connectivity is very important to us. And for many decades, we have underinvested in physical infrastructure. So we suffer in comparison with our high-flying Asian neighbors, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand. So underinvestment has become a major constraint to achieving, for attracting investment, for achieving high growth, and also for alleviating poverty. For example, from 2001 to 2015, the Philippines only spent on average 2% of GDP for infrastructure. That's dismal, right? So this situation was reversed in 2016 to 2020 by the previous administration. To put in context, in the Philippine political system, the president is elected for a 6-year term, no re-election. So he's expected to do what he can do within that 6-year term and then hand it over to the next administration. So as I said, the previous administration spent 5 to 6% of GDP for infrastructure, and that made a lot of difference. And we also ended up inheriting from that administration a long list of projects, some 197 top priority projects worth 155 billion US dollars. Now, so we now have a ready to implement projects. This includes energy, water, logistics, manufacturing, tourism, health, and education projects. Now, to ensure adequate financing, the government has reformed its tax system. It has also committed to maintain the level of spending, 5 to 6% of GDP, for the next 6 years. And these are all embedded, these fiscal commitments are embedded in the Philippines' first ever medium-term fiscal program. In addition, we have revised the legal framework for the public-private partnership. And so those are the critical changes that we did so that we can meet the critical needs for smart, climate-resilient infrastructure development without sacrificing fiscal space. I'll stop here.
Thank you for that fantastic overview on the prioritization of public projects in the Philippines. Let's move now to Mr. Wang. Please share your thoughts, Mr. Wang, on connectivity infrastructure challenges in today's environment and in your country.
谢谢主持人，各位嘉宾、各位代表，大家好。刚才听了帕尔特副行长的致辞，还有我们马伊特、本杰明2位财长他们的发言，听了以后很受启发呀。大家都知道基础设施互联互通是促进产业发展、经济发展和民生改善的，可以说也是推动区域经济合作和增长的重要的因素。那么当前呢，基础设施互联互通面临着很大的挑战，它的挑战包括地缘政治的紧张、发展中国家财政和债务负担的加重、融资渠道受限、气候变化加剧等等这些多重的挑战。那么面临这样挑战呢，大家做的我听的，我就从中国这个来看的话，我们的看法呢，就是各方一定要坚持互利共赢，反对脱钩断链、小院高墙，这主要是为互联互通营造良好的环境和便利的条件。第二个呢，就是要加大资金动员，融资缺口是互联互通最大的短板，所以说要通过创新投融资的方式，撬动私营部门积极参与，来为互联互通提供更大的资金的支持。第三呢，是要打造这种示范典型、示范的项目，它作为引领。那么结合这种最紧迫的需求，加强项目设计和实施，打通呢互联互通的痛点和堵点。那么在这里我要给大家讲一下呢，为推动全球的这种基础设施的互联互通呢，习近平主席提出来“一带一路”倡议。我们呢是积极的与各方加强互联互通的硬联通、硬件的联通，那提升呢标准规则的 软件方面。
global connectivity. Over the past 10 years, China's trade volume with countries along the Belt and Road grew by 8.6% annually, and the two-way investment with those countries adds up to 270 billion US dollars. And this is a remarkable effect of global connectivity. And going forward, we will continue to deepen cooperation based on the principle of extensive consultation, joint contribution, and shared benefits, and work for global infrastructure connectivity. Thank you very much.
Mr. Wang, highlighting the point there of delinking, which brings me to my next question. I think, Professor Iwan Aziz, you can help us out here. In the wake of COVID, we've really seen the need to rebalance supply chains and deal with economic volatility and fiscal constraints. To what extent do all these factors pose a challenge to enhancing the network or connectivity?
Thank you very much for the question. The short answer is that definitely I sort of voice the other speakers' concern about the global situation that affects the ability of individual country to deal with whatever crisis in front of them, because what we are experiencing now is not just simple crisis or even just multiple crises. This is polycrisis. Just to clarify, what do I mean by polycrisis? If it is multiple crises, we can at least estimate the impact of the individual crisis. But in a polycrisis like what we are having now, it's really unpredictable in terms of the effect. But in short, you can say that the whole effect is bigger than the sum of the individual crisis effect. So in that sense, I fully agree with the Minister of Finance from Egypt, who really concerned with the idea of how to deal with this huge challenge. At the same time, debt is rising, cost of fund is been, going up because of the interest rate and so forth. Now, on the supply chains in particular, if you look at the Asia as an example, for example, if you look at, let me try to remember, the number is 59, 17, 29, 21, and 38. What are those numbers? That's not my telephone number, by the way. The 58% is the intra-Asian trade. So if you look at the total trade of Asia, let's say 100, 58% of it is within Asia. That shows the resilience of the region. That's why if you look at the helicopter view of the world, Asia, despite all this crisis, is doing relatively well compared to the rest of the world. So I think the short answer to the question whether this sort of connectivity will contribute to the resilience, definitely the answer is yes. Now, unfortunately, in the area of finance, Asia is not really global bias. It's more local bias, or even, because if you look at the intra-Asian flows of the financial resources is only 17%. That means more than 80% of the flow of the funds in Asia is with the rest of the world rather than among Asian countries. But in the area of bonds market, it's really encouraging, because not only the number is quite high, is at 27%, but it's also increasing over time. Now, does it mean that MDB cannot contribute something to it? Of course, there are still things. For example, if you look at the value chains, it's not really global value chains that is happening in Asia, but regional value chains. Now, it has been increasing, but most of the goods involved in the regional value chains is low technology and primary sector. So that means the region has to sort of speed up the process of upgrading what kinds of goods and services involved in the regional value chains. So in short, my point here is that I sort of share the concerns of many of the speakers before about the poly-crisis that we're having now, and I cannot imagine that this is really the time for cooperation. Unfortunately or ironically, this is the time where it is very hard to garner a real concrete cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. In spite of any crisis, we still need the lights on, so I want to broaden the discussion a little. Ms. Rosli, Indonesia plays such an important role in the area of regional energy connectivity. It has substantial renewable power energy potential spread across your 17,000 islands. From the perspective of energy connectivity, what challenges does Indonesia currently face?
Yeah, thank you for the questions. First of all, I would like to thank and very honored to be here before all the excellencies in the same panel. So I would like to take the questions that what are the challenges that Indonesia face for the regional connectivity, especially in the energy sector. Just for anyone who has not been familiar with
الآن ستتعاون مع كثير من الشركات وهي تخيلوا كم التحديات التي نواجهها فيما يتعلق بالنطاق الجغرافي لهؤلاء العملاء ونحاول توصيلهم ببعضهم البعض. لذلك فإننا لدينا كثير من الأنظمة الأساسية والأنظمة الفرعية داخل المدينة التي تمكن المواطنين من التواصل مع بعضهم البعض. بالطبع هناك آليات فرعية تعزز الجدوى المالية المستخدمة في هذا النطاق بين الجزر. إذن هذه هي النقطة الأولى. لدينا أيضا مهارات ديموغرافية، مهارات جغرافية ومهارات من أنواع أخرى. لذلك فإنني أرى أن دور بنوك متعددة الأطراف هي تحقيق التواصل بين الجزر المختلفة في إندونيسيا. النقطة الثانية
as probably everyone
of connectivity and connectivity. We understand that Egypt plans to become a regional connectivity hub for energy, transport, and digital connectivity, as well as become a key link between Asia and Africa. Now, we know that 10 years ago, the African Union adopted that vision for 2063 called the Africa That We Want. And one of the key goals was to have world-class infrastructure crisscrossing the continent. Keeping these goals in mind, where do you see the biggest opportunities presently for connectivity investment?
If I take the case of Egypt, over the last 7-8 years, we have seen the opportunity through the Suez Canal. We thought that by ensuring that Suez Canal will become a focal for the connectivity, and this was a main reason behind having this parallel part or the second Suez Canal.
not only in addition to that, we were able to build 4 tunnels, new tunnels below the Suez Canal to ensure that the connectivity between the part in Africa and the part in Asia, which we believe was also the Suez Canal economic zone, which can be also a part of connectivity. We can see that cluster areas, Chinese industrial area, Russian's industrial area, and many others in this part. In addition to that, we thought, okay, let us play our role in connectivity by ensuring that upgrading our roads, transportation, ports, to Libya, to Sudan, to Asia, to Europe. So role on that part, but again, I will come back to the financing part. As a Minister of Finance, the financing is a challenge. How to finance all these projects? They are heavy projects, long-term project, and you need to finance this project, and you should not expect that you will get the return tomorrow. So it's a long term. So again, we have to take into consideration that in order to ensure a success in building or putting the foundation for all the project to ensure connectivity and ensure that every country will play its role in this strategy, it means you have to ensure that the money needed to each country to play its role is there and at a lower cost. Otherwise, you will put a plan for ensuring that you will achieve specific objectives to connecting the African countries with the Asian countries, with the Europeans and all of that, and it will stay for a long time without implementation. But if each country has the part of the strategy and the part of the financing which is reasonable, the low cost, blah, 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 it can move according to a plan. Yes, we have a plan that at a specific time, our African continent will be connected, will be have an integrated system of roads, ports, and all of that. But after reviewing what should be achieved, you will find that not many of us were able to achieve its part in this strategy or this implementation. If you ask each country, they will say, oh, over the last 4 years, I have other alternative, other priorities and other things to do, and I have to delay or to put aside my part in this strategy. So again, we tried in Egypt, we spent a lot of money, but I have to be very honest with you that it's now asking for MDBs, private sector, partnership with other countries, like those who have surplus to mobilize money to enable Egypt, and also MDBs like AIIB more on infrastructure and mobilization of funding.
Minister Mai, you mentioned private sector partnership, and I wonder, how do you see the role of AIIB? How can they help in terms of convening power?
I think they played a significant role. Egypt is example. They played significant role with BIMPAN because they were able to help mobilizing private sector, and BIMPAN now is the second or third biggest in the world for solar, for generating electricity. And also they are helping us in Dumyat port containers by moving the private sector in partnership with the public sector to upgrade the Dumyat ports with all these facilities. So Also, they have two good projects with financing, with banking sector by putting the money to be given to the private sector, so the private sector can invest more and by this money. They have already done with the National Bank of Egypt around $300 million, and I think they have another project with Bank Mas for the same amount or around. So I think they are giving good examples, AIIB, in different way, how to mobilize the private sector to move and to invest and to partnership with the public sector. I think these examples are very successful for the AIIB in the implementation in Egypt.
Thank you, Minister Mait. Still on that point of practicalities, Dr. Diokno, we've seen countries boost spending to stimulate economies. Philippines had the Build, Build, Build program that created 6.5 million jobs. That was between 2016 and 2020. Do you think there are opportunities now to invest in connectivity infrastructure projects, and how can MDBs like AIIB help in the Philippines?
All right. In addition to our efforts to deliver on the post-pandemic healthcare and, of course, the economic recovery measures during the pandemic, we also took this as an opportunity to enact game-changing reforms to attract investments, especially in infrastructure. For example, we didn't sit idly by during the crisis and wait for the virus to subside. We opened up several sectors to full foreign ownership, and these include airports, toll roads, shipping, expressways, telecommunications, and renewable energy. Full foreign ownership. So this was intended to complement the, as you mentioned, the previous administration's massive Build, Build, Build program, which lifted infrastructure spending to about 5 to 6% of GDP annually. Now that the economy has recovered from the pandemic, the new administration, the Marcos Jr. administration, is picking up the momentum through high infrastructure spending at 5 to 6% of GDP annually, but with a twist. Now we're encouraging public-private partnerships. So from Build, 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 we have scaled it up to the more ambitious Build Better More program. Each strategy is geared toward the delivery of sustainable, resilient, integrated, and modern infrastructure systems. And its focus is on physical and digital connectivity, water resources, energy, and social infrastructure. Now, support from MDBs and bilateral sources is critical in implementing and completing our 197 top priority infrastructure projects, because some 80 out of the 197 priority projects are being considered for support with an aggregate investment requirement of around $82.5 billion US. And more than half of these projects are for physical and digital connectivity. And to ensure effective and quality implementation of infrastructure projects, risk management solutions and policy reforms using the whole of government approach are being adopted and practiced. Additional project preparation facilities to be co-structured with MDBs will be key in sustaining a robust pipeline and ensuring the quality at entry of projects. And currently, we are exploring a facility for master plan studies with the AIIB. Stop here.
Thank you for that very, very comprehensive picture. Mr. Wang, I'd like to turn to you now. In a post-pandemic world, we often hear discussions of de-risking in relationship to supply chain disruption risk. Countries are also facing financial constraints. We heard Dr. Mait speak about that. What are China's strategies and opportunities to enhance connectivity in this challenging time? What are its plans moving forward?
谢谢
Thank you, Michelle. And just now, you mentioned that the de-risking issue, and this is a very serious issue. Enhancing global industrial chain cooperation against the backdrop of economic globalization is necessary for an open and inclusive global economy, especially after the pandemic. So faced with the actions of some countries to disrupt the normal operation of global industrial chains by reshoring the manufacturing industry, generalizing the concept of national security, and misusing the excuse of de-risking, we should firmly oppose such actions. And we should jointly safeguard the safety and stability of the industrial chains and supply chains. And we should further expand mutually beneficial cooperation and share more development outcomes with the people around the world. And just now, you asked us about China's achievements and actions on connectivity. So as I mentioned, we do this through the Belt and Road Initiative to deepen infrastructure connectivity. And I would like to share our measures and actions with you, mainly in 5 aspects. The first is so that means connectivity in 5 aspects. The first is to enhance policy communication to facilitate strategy alignment and standard connectivity. We pay attention to enhancing policy coordination with relevant countries and international organizations, and form synergy in areas of development planning, economic policies, and rules and standards so as to create favorable conditions for pragmatic cooperation. By June 2023, China had signed over 200 Belt and Road cooperation documents with 152 countries and 32 international organizations. And the second aspect is to deepen infrastructure connectivity to develop a stable, smooth, and resilient supply chain. We work with relevant countries to accelerate the development of an integrated infrastructure network and create favorable conditions for a stable and smooth supply chain. I'd like to pose one example. The operation of the China-Laos Railway has transformed Laos from a landlocked country into a land-linked country. The World Bank predicts that this railway would reduce the domestic transportation cost of Laos by 20 to 40%, better enabling Laos to integrate into the global supply chain. The third is to facilitate unimpeded trade and strive for trade liberalization and investment facilitation. So far, China has signed 19 free trade agreements with 26 countries and regions. In 2022, China's trade volume with Belt and Road partners added up to 13.8 trillion RMB yuan, up by 19.4% year-on-year. The fourth is to expand financing and actively explore a diversified, stable, and sustainable investment and financing system with controllable risks. We follow international rules and standards and carry out co-financing and third-party market cooperation programs with the World Bank, AIIB, MCDF, and other international institutions, so as to involve other development partners and private sectors, and expand the financing channel for connectivity. The fifth is to consolidate people-to-people exchange and carry out exchanges in areas of education, health, and culture for connectivity. And I'd like to share with our dear guests that this year is the 10th anniversary of the Belt and Road Initiative. China will join hands with all parties to focus on connectivity, deepen pragmatic cooperation, and realize win-win results and common development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wang, for sharing China's plans moving forward with people in this room. We appreciate it. Ms. Rosli, I'd like to turn to you for a view from Indonesia. We know in Singapore that we are working with Indonesia to provide clean energy imports, large-scale clean energy imports, and also to help us reduce our reliance on natural gas. How will energy connectivity provide more opportunities for Indonesia to achieve its own transition goals?
Yeah, I think probably we may need to look into what numbers that we are talking about now in Indonesia, powering the people of 270 millions. Now, currently we have what we put on the assessment as of now is additional investment of around 180 billion US dollars for generations, transmission, and distributions. For the connectivity itself, of course, we need to get the infrastructure, the transmission connection or distribution connections, and of course we also need to look into the generations as a source of the energy. Indonesia, compared to Singapore or to the region, of course we are quite privileged because the source of energy is quite rich in renewable primary energy. For the renewable also is quite rich. So we understand that we have the potentials. Of course, we should be working towards the regional connectivity, and currently we are under the study of the connections. We are now working on the ASEAN grid for the connectivity. We have been also discussing with Papua New Guinea even to help them supply the electricity from our place of Papua. So from the policy perspective and the interest to have a regional collaborations, we are there. But of course, as I mentioned before, we also need to have our national priority on the interconnectivity around the whole island. So we are now balancing the needs for interconnectivity or connectivity for the nations and also for the regional purpose. As you know, the challenge remains the same. The financing is the real challenge. The size of investment for that, for transmission lines, for example, for the whole country, we need around 24,000 kilometer circuits. So it's around half of the circumference of the Earth, and the amount of investment for up to 2040 of around 30 billion US dollars. That's not including the smart grid or smart control centers and the necessary control system for that of around 5 billion US dollars. So the investment required to build our connectivity for the purpose of driving the economy is also very challenging. And then at the same time, we are also looking into how we can, in the short run, for example, looking into the connectivity for the region as well. So we are working on it as of now.
Enormous tasks ahead, but thank you for that outline. I'd like to come to you, Professor Aziz. Mr. Wang gave us a great overview of the benefits accruing to partners of the Belt and Road Initiative. I wonder if you can join the dots for us to help us in this room. Lots of policymakers here who want to build growth and resilience. So will improving connectivity improve the overall resilience of countries' economies today?
The short answer is yes. But to pick up what Minister Wang just mentioned, if you look at the latest trend in terms of, let's say, we're talking about integration in trade area, we know that a number of the international multilateral agencies are dysfunctional now. Take, for example, the WTO, right? And as a result, if you look at the trend of the intra-regional trade, it's getting less of the globalized integration, but more regionalized integration. Take, for example, the number I used earlier. Intra-Asian trade is 58%. That was, by the way, 2021 data. My prediction is it's higher now because of the dysfunctional of the global institution. So Asia is getting more and more integrated in terms of trading among themselves, investing among themselves. So what Minister Wang mentioned earlier, I think the repercussions of what China is doing is there will be more sort of interaction both in trade as well as investment involving China and the rest of Asia. So that is a trend that is, you can call it not the first best, but it's the second best, because while we are waiting and hopefully the multilateralism is back to the picture. But while that is still in waiting mode, I think the region is going to sort of integrate themselves. Now, one other thing that I want to highlight here is that if we compare with the integration in Europe, we know in Europe is very heavy with the institution. They even have one currency and so on. This increase intra-regional trade in Asia is happening despite the fact there is no single currency and it's very institution light. There is no really heavy kind of a Brussels type of institution in Asia. Now, one argues that, well, what about the FTA? Because there's a number of FTA growing in Asia. Well, that's true, but if you look at the real sources of the increase intra-regional trade, it's not taking advantage of all the benefits promised by the FTAs. So the bottom line is that the reason why the region is doing very well in terms of integrating themselves is because of the unilateral policy. This is where I think the discussion yesterday during the governor's seminar is very useful in terms of how the MDB can help, not only in terms of project, not just in terms of project financing, but also program financing, because we need to really focus more on the governance reform in individual country, because evidence already show in Asia that even without strong institution cooperation, the integration is taking place in the region because of the unilateral policy.
I want to shift gears a little and look ahead to the future. Minister Maid, I'll come to you for this question. Financing infrastructure for tomorrow is AIIB's mission. What, in your opinion, do you have a vision of what connectivity infrastructure for tomorrow means or looks like?
It seems like more integration. Connectivity for tomorrow will be expanding over many sectors. We are talking about not only roads, bridges, railways. We are talking about energy. We are talking about electricity. We are talking about economic integration and cooperation. So I believe it will be across the border. It will be not only within the region. We are talking about now how to connect, for example, the three continents, Africa, Asia, and Europe, how we see can we cooperate on hydrogen export? How can we seek, for example, the African continent free zone between the African countries, and how this economic integration or economic activities within the continent will be serving Europe, will be also as a part of Asia. We can see more investment coming from Asia to Africa, playing a significant role to upgrade the infrastructure in Africa, which Africa needs heavily. So it seems that it will cover a lot of sectors. It seems that this might be a solution for connectivity is to have some sort of integration to ensure that tomorrow connectivity will be a reflection of integration of different sectors, which will also serve the idea of improving infrastructure, eventually improving the living standard of people, eventually creating jobs, eventually helping countries to improve and grow.
Thank you. Minister Wang, I'd like to come to you with the same question. How do you see the future of connectivity infrastructure?
谢谢主持人。
Thank you, Chair. Infrastructure, as everybody mentioned, that infrastructure connectivity has a great role to play in promoting economic growth. And in the future, about the infrastructure connectivity, I have 3 ideas to share with you. And the first is that the connectivity of infrastructure in the future is to improve the digital and smart level of connectivity. We know that developing countries now are still faced with large digital gaps because digitalization is developing rapidly, and developing countries are faced with a large gap, in particular in the area of infrastructure. And we should increase investment in digital infrastructure in developing countries and integrate the digital technology with all sectors to build a modern infrastructure system so as to enable those developing countries to integrate into the global economy. And digitalization in the infrastructure sector is very important. And second, we should improve the green and low carbon level of connectivity. Faced with the challenges of worsening climate change, developing countries are more vulnerable. And besides, they are still faced with the burden of debt. We should further invest in green infrastructure in developing countries and deepen pragmatic cooperation on green transportation, green energy, and green finance. In particular, in project design and implementation, we should emphasize climate change factors and implement those projects in a green and low-carbon manner so as to drive the green economic transition and play a leading role. And my third idea is to make connectivity more multidimensional and internet-based. And we should strive to form a connectivity system that covers the land, the sea, the sky, and the internet. For example, in the transportation sector, we should consider the integration and interaction of multiple transportation means such as highway, railway, waterway, and airlift, so as to increase efficiency and reduce carbon emission. At the same time, we should make overall plans on infrastructure related to transportation, energy, water conservation, and other sectors to improve the overall level of connectivity. And that's all I'd like to share. Thank you.
I'd like to pick up on the first of those 3 points with you, Mr. Diokno. The AIIB is working with the Philippines to foster an enabling environment for digital technologies and to boost inclusive and resilient economic growth. So this is the $400 million project, Post-Recovery Digital Transformation Program is its name. Can you tell us a little bit, can you give us an update on how the program is doing and why it's important to help transform the digital ecosystem of your country?
I honestly believe that digitalization can change the way people live, work, and play. And so that's the $400 million US dollar, call it the Post-Recovery Digital Transformation Program with AIIB is very important. And by the way, this is co-financed with the World Bank with the $600 million. It's equivalent to about $1 billion US dollars. The AIIB's I4T strategy is aligned with the Philippine Development Plan 2023 to 2028, which identifies strategies toward infrastructure development for economic and social transformation. The Digital Transformation Development Policy Loan supports our digital infrastructure agenda through 3 main policy reforms. Under the first reform, the program supports our commitment to mainstreaming the digitalization of government systems through a whole-of-government approach by improving digital government service delivery and pro-competition infrastructure policies. Under the second reform, the program intends to further the country's financial inclusion through its digital finance agenda. It highlights the importance of improving the digital finance landscape through the wide-scale adoption of digital payments by consumers and businesses. And finally, the program promotes boosting business growth in digital services through the pending bill on internet transactions, seeking to update and introduce regulations for online platforms obligations in relation to both consumers and suppliers. The government also seeks to foster competition in digital marketplaces by publishing guidelines on abuse of dominance and rules of merger procedures involving digital operators. And we hope that the bank can support us in the amendment of the implementing rules and regulations to the Philippine Competition Act to incorporate digital-specific antitrust tools. Reforming digital skills provision has also been identified as a priority reform under the program. And we expect that with these policy reforms in place, the Philippines will be better capacitated to improve the implementation of our digital transformation, including the development of hard digital infrastructure later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Diokno. I still want to drill down on this point of digital connectivity, but perhaps from a different perspective. So, Ms. Rosalie, from an energy provider's perspective, you have millions of consumers, so it's more a B2C perspective. But what comes to mind for you when you think about people-to-people connectivity and enhancing that through infrastructure?
I think for PLN there are 2 perspectives that we can see. One, PLN as an enabler for digital connectivity, and second is PLN as the user, as a business, right? I think I'd like to share probably from the business perspective. For digital connectivity is very important for PLN now because operating an area as large as what we have now, of course, needs some integrations. So this will be helped by the digital connectivity, especially when we talk about when we are going to get into the energy transitions, then we have instill much more variable renewable energy. Then we need to have these features of intermittency that needs to be adopted into the power system operation, for example. So we need to have the control system. Then we need to have internet, of course. We need to have connectivity in digital to enable us to operate the system under the more, based on the renewable energy, which high in intermittency. So I think that's very important. And second is, as of now, we also need to improve the business performance in terms of connections with our customers, customers' experience needs to be improved, so we need to have a digital platform for that. So in PLN now we are very, very heavy in digitalizations. We have digital power plants, digital transmissions, operation system, digital customer experience. So 3 years ago we have developed our super apps PLN Mobile that helps us a lot in performance, business performance, as well as for the customers to get more and better services from PLN. So those on the business perspective. With our digital platform as well, and of course this internet and connectivity is very key for that, to enable that. We have also improved our business performance, right? On the other perspective, on the user, on the enabler, PLN, of course, in Indonesia, probably anyone knows that the growth of the digital use in Indonesia is very, very quick. The speed is very high. 10 years ago, the use of cellular phones for the population's percentage was only 30%. Now, last year, 2022, it's already 60%, so it's double in 10 years. And we see that more than 50%, the use of the internet, for example, are in the productive age. So people below 50 use most of them. Below 25 to 50 years old, they use around 50%. Below 25, they use around 40% of the usage of the internet. So we can see that this is very critical for the economy, for the country, that the internet is very, very key. And of course, for the internet to be able to operate, we need the electricity, right? So we can see that PLN use this as an enabler. So for the people-to-people connections, because around 20% is used for the education. So it's very critical for the development of the people as well. For PLN, similar for the business, not the people, similar to PLN, we are now using digitalization, Internet of Things, and everything with digital and connectivity is very key. So I think from us as an energy company, is very key to also look into the digital connectivity as a factor, as an opportunity, as also as the thing that we are in need to be in support for that. Thank you.
As well as being a key driver of digital connectivity. For my last question, I'd like to come to you, Professor. We were talking in the Speaker's Lounge a little earlier. You're writing a book and you've been traveling across Jakarta, speaking all of Indonesia, actually, learning from the ground up what the perspectives are on infrastructure and connectivity. So when we talk about infrastructure from the future, what do you think countries and MDBs like AIIB should be focusing on?
That's a very, very good question, because we all know that electricity, internet, those are the necessary conditions to enhance the connectivity. But it's not that I'm worried, but I think we also need to pay more attention on the human side. And I'm talking about the internet literacy of most of the people. It so happened that I'm currently doing research, field research. I notice in many rural areas, they still have a very low degree of internet literacy. So what we need to pay attention on top of all the hardware, the electricity, the internet connection, and so on, it's really how to avoid the digital divide and how to make sure that more and more people who used to be unable to be connected, now that they are living in a different world, now they're connected. How can they use that? Because one thing about the number of the users, but another thing about what do they use for? Because if I look at the trend, which is very mind-boggling to me, if I look at the trend, the number of the users of the internet has been increasing dramatically, but the growth of the productivity has been declining also persistently. So something is missing there in terms of what is the use of the internet for. So in the context of connectivity and we've been talking about how expensive it is, and given the global situation, the affordability becomes very important, and many governments are complaining about not able to use their fiscal resources and so forth. Maybe if the MDB can sort of focus more on helping the ability of majority of the people, especially in the rural area, can have or at least improve their literacy in terms of internet and so forth. Number one, the cost will be much less than the mega project. So in terms of the cost, it will be low. Number two, it will be effective, because we are not only talking about digitalization, but we are also talking about inclusive digitalization. So I think that's the only point that I would like to add to the role of the MDBs. By the way, this is not only AIIB, but also ADB, the World Bank, and so forth. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, panelists. This has been a really lively and meaningful exchange. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause for all the panelists. Thank you very much.